Hello, my lovely friends, it's Margaret, and this is a reading vlog. Welcome back to the channel. Today, this is going to be an adventure because here's the thing. I agreed to be a part of a collab with a whole bunch of other bookish creators. You may know them from the Goodreads collab they did at the beginning of everyone reading like the last 10 years in a specific genre, and then also an April Fool's collab. I'll have both of those linked down below in the description box, as well as the playlist for the collab that we are doing now, which is to read bookish awards. Me being me forgot. Well, here's the thing. I didn't actually forget that I agreed to do this. I forgot that time passed. We all chose a bookish awards that we wanted to read, finalists or winners of that particular bookish award. I chose the self-published fantasy blog off version 8, the most recent one for all of the books that came out in 2022. I have 10 books that I need to read. Not a lot of time to do them. The good news is that most of these are on Kindle Unlimited because they are self-published. There are a few that have audiobooks that maybe I can spend an Audible credit on. I have to figure out of these 10 finalists, what are the books I absolutely want to read for this video. I don't think I don't have to read all of them, but I need to read some of them. So the books that were finalists for SPFBO, and this is in no particular order, this is just the order that the graphic was in, actually, is we have Tethered Spirits by T.A. Hernandez. We have Small Miracles by Olivia Atwater. Fire of the Forebears by L.A. Buck. This comes with the caveat that the author has since passed away, so this book is the only book that will be in this series. That puts this at the very, very end of my priorities list, just about. We have Scales and Sensibility by Stephanie Burgess. The 13th Hour by Trudy Skies. We got a real Crescent City situation going on there. The Umbral Storm by Alec Hudson. A Touch of Light by Thiago Abdallah. A Song for the Void by Andrew C. Piazza. Mysterious Ways by Abby Evans. And Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons by Quinby Olson. I did enlist some help to help me figure out what books should I be prioritizing if I do have to choose less than the full 10. And so I'm going to go to past Margaret, who is also probably wearing this same shirt.
Brianna is here because she's a lovely human being and also has read all of the books that are currently on my list. And it's a lot of books. So I'll start out with what's the easiest, which is like, which ones do you think I am most likely to enjoy or like? I know you've recommended Scales and Sensibility.
Scales and Sensibility, I think it's very much it's a Regency romance, but with pet dragons.
Yes.
So like they're like lap dragons. So like you can't go wrong there. That one I think is like an easy win for you. And then Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons. It's a very long title. It has a very similar vibe. You read from Olivia Atwater before and really liked her stuff.
That's like definitely. I mean, it's the winner, so obviously I have to read it.
Well, yeah, you have to read it.
I was planning on it at some point.
But I also think you'll love it.
Part of the appeal of these videos is that, like, sometimes we end up torturing ourselves. What's one or two that you think will be my least favorite?
Song for the Void. Absolutely.
The other, like, main category that I wanted to ask you about is, besides the ones that you think I'll really like, are there any that you're really interested to see my reaction? Whether you think it'll be a good reaction, bad reaction, but to see my reaction too.
I mean, like, I obviously loved A Touch of Light.
That is that's on the list.
That one is, and especially if you immersion read it, like audio and physical at the same time. But it's not a book that holds your hand. So a lot of people don't like that book because it kind of just like throws you in the deep end. And then the other one I think will just be fun for you. I don't know that you'll love it, but Tethered Spirits, when I was reading it, it felt like a D&D quest.
So after chatting with Brianna, I sat down and I looked at all of the synopses of the books to see which ones I was most interested in. I went into this knowing the top 3 were going to be Scales and Sensibility. Yeah, it was going to be Scales and Sensibility, Small Miracles, and A Touch of Light, just because Scales and Sensibility I immediately interested in. Small Miracles, I've read Olivia Atwater and I absolutely adored her book. Oh, look at that, it's right there. Half a Soul. And then A Touch of Light, Brianna will not stop raving about this book. And it interests me. The cover looks interesting, all of that stuff. After that, this is where things get interesting because I read the synopsis of The 13th Hour and was like, that is, I want to read that. And then number 5, so these are the 5 that I absolutely want to get to. Number 5 is Miss Percy's Guide to the Care and Feeding of Dragons. I think it's that. It's a really long title. Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons. Apparently, we got to be specific about the British part. After that, we have Song for the Void. There are parts of it that interest me. After Song for the Void, we do have Mysterious Ways, then Tethered Spirits, Fire of the Forebears. This is slightly above the only this is sad. I read the synopsis for the Umbral Storm and was like, it does not sound like my thing. The main 5 are what I am prioritizing right now. If I can get to the other 5 between now and whenever we decide this video needs to go up. Right now, we're just, there's a general date of late July. If anyone's wondering, it's January. It's June 21st. So, like, I'm not fully screwed, but I'm a little screwed. We are going to be starting with the 13th Hour by Trudy Skies. This, I've read about 20 pages of it. It's a steampunk, and that is the thing that got me, because a girl loves, oh my, like, there are so many things you can sell me if you say the words steampunk. Technically, it's one word. We have 2 main characters. Our main character is trying to help people. There's a lot, I feel, that's going to be talking about immigration and things like that. But the main character is currently part of like a secret society that helps people move between the different like domains or realms. I also played D&D last night, so I don't know which, I might be getting some words mixed up. But basically, society is stratified. There are supposed to be 12 equal domains. But they are not equal. You have some that are higher up than others, and they also have more, like, our main character lives down in the darkness away from light, not necessarily by choice. She's what's called a Vesper. Depending on what your domain is, you swear fealty to a god, and you're required to tithe to that god, and there are consequences to not tithing. And so her particular god where she lives is a very, very strict, taxing, not good god. I mean, the title of the series is Cruel Gods. She helps people move out of whatever her domain is. She's helping them move out and leave before the tithe comes up, and they have to forfeit their souls or something. I'm not, like, we just watched it happen. It was kind of creepy. Like, the person was there and then they were gone. It's giving Victorian vibes, but American politics. Now is probably the time that, because I know indie authors tend to be a little bit more interactive sometimes with reviewers or readers, and I know there are a lot of reviewers that do not want authors involved at all. This is not meant for constructive criticism. If you get something away from it, I am a writer myself, obviously. So if you get something, can take something away from it, cool for you. But just, if you're gonna watch this, don't get your feelings hurt if it turns out I don't like your book. It's not a personal attack. I'm not gonna tag you. You don't need to tag me. We can just exist. And if you take something away from it, great. Thanks, but that's not what this is. Just know that I go into this wanting to love the book. I'm going to be as fair as possible, and I'm going to try and help it find the right reader, even if that reader is not me. We almost did an entire clip with me completely out of focus. Anyways, speaking of focus, you guys may, I'm gonna apologize in advance if some of the future footage is a little sketchy when it comes to lighting and focus and all of those kinds of things. I'm actually going to start playing around and trying to learn how to use the settings on my camera rather than just relying on auto, so that I can get things more the way I want them. I am here with an update on the 13th Hour. I'm about 46 pages in, and so we're still needing a lot of details on the world, which is fine, but we have gotten, with both of our point of view characters, and we've gotten, it's like I'm in theater class again. So the way this world is set up is everything's separated into 12 different domains, like a clock, and our main character lives in Vesper, I think it is, or she is a Vesper, so I think where she lives is Vesper, but I'm not entirely sure. There are a lot of terms that I'm not entirely sure of. Also, I think I finally figured out that, like, when the characters are talking about mortals, they just mean people. Like, everyone but the gods are mortals, and so now I'm confused. So, like, maybe immortals are not part, but But why are we calling them mortals if we're not regularly interacting with people who are not? But this world, everybody has, like, depending on which domain you are from, you have different traits based on that. She's been helping people cross from Vesper into one of the other domains illegally. So I am getting the, what's the word? I'm getting the impression that we're going to be talking a lot about immigration, and we're going to be talking a lot about power. I know religion is going to be a major kind of a major theme. I'm sorry, I need more tea apparently. Brain is not working right now. A major theme, and it's going to be interesting because we have this character that she's kind of like a smuggler almost, and then we also have our other main character who's a cop, basically. And boy, he sounds like a cop. The world's most boring cop. Like, it was really funny because in our main characters, is it Kale? I can't remember. I'll get back with you on that one, but in her point of view, she was talking about how diviners are boring, and I was like, oof, that's rude, but I like it. And then we get to his point of view, and he's describing his ideal morning, and I was like, God, that's so mundane. Obviously, they are going to end up working together because she's gotten set up in this situation where she is being blamed for a death that I am 99.9999999999999% sure she did not commit. My personal pet theory, because basically she's in this altercation with another diviner who is a very high up diviner, and she ends up like something happens, her skin, like almost like her skin changes. So she goes from having dark blue skin to having glimmer gold skin. Glimmer, another one of the 12 people. She seems to be some sort of changeling. Like certain things we just found out don't work on her, which is a surprise to her. And this skin thing that's happened is a surprise to her. There's something that's been going around killing diviners in this. And my thing is, okay, our other main character, Quinn, he has been looking into people being illegally taken to workhouses and being used for cheap labor in this society. And here's the thing, like the person that's telling him about this murder, we know he is working with the people that are kidnapping people and taking them to workhouses. Okay, so we know this. So my thing is, what's his face? He doesn't deserve a name. I know he has a name, he has to have one. The ambassador dude. I don't care. I give two shits about his name. He's the one telling Quinn what happened and all of this stuff, and he's the one bringing up these 5 bodies that they've been finding where like the body's not supposed to be there after someone dies. How would you know if someone got murdered? There are probably a lot of serial killers going around this society scot-free. So anyways, I think he's pointing out these murders because he wants to take Quinn off of the workhouse thing, which we know he is involved with, and there are some other shenanigans that are involved, and it's actually messing. I think it might be messing with the trams that go between the different realms. But is it really a Margaret vlog if I don't come to you with terrible lighting sometime after 10 p.m. to talk with you about, where's the fuck is my, okay, sorry, I couldn't find the coaster, to talk with you about a book. I am about 200 pages into the 13th Hour at this point, so I'm at page 203 currently, which means that I am 40% into this book. Like I said, I have thoughts. So here's the thing, this is how I described it, I'm not bored. But I'm not bored. I like the idea of the world. I like the idea of the society and the characters and what they're doing. And I have a lot of questions. I just think it needed a stronger edit. And so that's like pulling me out of the story because I'll see places where I'm like, ooh, I see what you're trying to do with this sentence. It's not working. But if you'd done this, it would be what you want. Like, please do not get me wrong. Like, there are definitely genuinely, like, where is it? There was a line. There was a metaphor that this author that Trudy did. Where was it? Hold on. Let me see if I can find this for you guys. Genuinely, I loved this line and I highlighted it because I really liked it and now I can't find it. We've got a good story. We've got a good plot. We got good characters. We've got all of that and it feels like there is a level of like extra that's on top, like extra sauce that's been put on top and we don't need the extra sauce. Does that make sense? Or it's not the right extra sauce. What's his name? Quinn. Quinn is known as the Dark Warden because he had one incident. But it seems really weird. Like, yes, he killed 5 people, so, like, to be known infamously, yeah, that makes sense. But to, like, be known as something as, like, big bad evil guy as the Dark Warden over one incident is a little bit, like, we didn't need it at that level. The fact that he is in law enforcement and that he's known for having, like, that was all we needed. We didn't need this extra moniker that was on top of it. The world, I like the world and the domains and the setup of that, but I think we're getting stuck at a lot of the surface level details of, like, the fact that, like, we have people that have different color skin, and all of these random details, and they're getting in the way of, like, getting real deep into the world building. So, like, it's not that these aren't details that I don't think are important, but I think we're looking at the prioritization of details is off a little bit in how this is being written. The other thing that I reached out to Brianna to confirm this, and this wasn't just me, but I feel like Quinn's point of view is much better written. I wrote, like, noting the fact that Quinn's POV feels better written than Kay's, and I'm interested in why. There's so much where I can see what Trudy Skies is aiming for, but she's not quite hitting it with Kale. Her POV feels like an overdramatic YA novel, and his feels like an adult novel. One of the things that the author does, and I think that this is done pretty well, is that we do have passages at the beginning of chapters that give us a little bit of an idea into the politics and the workings of the world that is going on. And I think if we had used those a little bit more strategically, I'm sure there was a strategy behind this, but I think that there is some stuff that we get in the, like, some of the details and things that feel weird and forced in the narration. If we'd gotten some of that in some of these bits, feels like a lot of the details that we are getting about the world building are superficial and forced and not what we actually need to know, which I understand to some extent with this. Like obviously some of this plot our main characters are not going to know, and it's going to have to be revealed as it goes. But it just, like I said, like the detail with her calling all people mortals instead of just calling them people, like that's a flavor we didn't really we didn't really need. One of the examples that I have is, like, so there's information that they need from one of the workhouses, and the way that we decide we're going to do that is we're going to infiltrate the workhouse, and we're going to try and get this information. And so I go, like, oh, okay, so, like, because the workhouses are something that we know from the beginning is an issue, cool. And then, and so I'm like, okay, so we're going to have this book where she infiltrates the workhouse, and then she's going to, like, the diviner is also, Quinn is also investigating the warehouses. And so I'm thinking, okay, so they're going to come together, and maybe she'll be his person on the inside at this warehouse, and we're going to have a whole thing, like, at least I was expecting, like, a good portion of this plot to be in this workhouse. And we're there for 5 minutes, and then we're gone. And it's like, why did we go to all of that effort when there were simpler ways that we could have done this that wouldn't have taken away from the plot? Like, this little tangent could have served the story so much better. Like it could be serving. And instead it is working minimum wage at a Chick-fil-A in the kitchen. I am at 82%. I have an hour and 41 minutes left in this book, and I'm not, okay, so here's the thing. I don't want people to think that I am hating this. It's not like there are so many good ideas in here, and there's so much stuff that this author is trying to work with. My thing is, like, we're sacrificing depth in the world building and the characters in the plot for more world building, character, and plot. Does that make sense? We're getting a lot of that, but it's all staying very surface level. Like, we just had something happen. Oh, speaking of, there are content warnings for sexual assault. Like, I don't know if it's dubious consent. If you want exact details of what happened, I will let you know. Like, ask me. I'm more than happy to, like, DM or put it in the comment under, because it's a mild spoiler. thankfully that's not who she's gonna end up with, but, like, anyways. So we just had we've just had the big, like, kind of at the end of the act, that it's called what's called the Dark Night of the Soul, if you are familiar with the Save the Cat story beats, where everything is terrible for our heroes, and it looks like it's at the end, and nothing is going to go, like, everybody's gonna die, all of that. And so we know this is the lowest point of the novel. Or that is what is going to be the lowest point of the novel, where all of our heroes are disheartened, and they are all in bad places. So, like, we're going through that part, but, like, there are just things that happen in the way to getting us to that part that I'm just like, none of these are being handled with the nuance, the depth, or the care that they're being, it's borderline rape, in my opinion. And then our heroine just brushes it off. I'm sorry, I'm just, like, that scene really annoyed me. So we just had a bunch of, like, we had a death that happened, they die, and I'm just like, I'm supposed to feel sorry for you, but you were just annoying the entire book. And then you got worse. You became a person that I actually, like, genuinely am and also I'm like, but I'm also mad because now you don't have to suffer the consequences. That's not going to happen. Like, I wanted that to go so like, there was, like, it's one of those things where, events were forced, so the heroine has to make a choice, or our main character has to make a choice that she was going to have to make eventually anyways, but it feels like that choice is being forced on her instead of, or has been forced on her by the story, rather than it being a moment that actually, like, meant something. We're supposed to feel sad, but it feels like our main character doesn't even feel sad that this happened. This is a very important person to her that this just happened with, or happened to. Also, I've had to read, there was a talk about, they have these, one of the people is called, they're the Necros, and they're almost vampire-like, and one of their favorite things is to suck and fuck. And in the conversation where we're walking Kale through how to seduce someone as a Necro, sentences were uttered that my ace self did not need to hear. I need to know that sentence existed. Hopefully this is the last time we'll have to put up with this ghastly lighting situation. I have some mini softbox lights that are going to be here. But I did finish 13th Hour. So I ended up giving it a 3-star. I think, like, here's the thing. The book only really began in the last 25%. The pacing was better. Like, we weren't getting as much of the, like, extraneous internal thought stuff and all of that. There's stuff that she's doing with that, but also it's very complicated, and, like, I think that there's just, like, we need a little polishing here. But the way that it ended, like, the second book, I've already got it downloaded to my Kindle to read when I am done with this, or when it comes up, because, like, which it's 757 pages. Trudy, why? I know why. It's Kindle Unlimited. I'm interested in what happens next. Malk can choke. I don't ever want to see him again. I am assuming, based on certain things, that what happened at the end, there's a thing that happens, and I am assuming that that's going to be fixed by the end of the series. Apparently there's 4 books in the series. I hope Malk stays where Malk is. Like, just get rid of him. I don't care. I'm glad we did, I will say, report on the whole sexual assault / rape thing. It was called what it was at some point in the novel, and I don't think our main character is ready to hear that. But it was called what it was, and I'm very glad for it. I'll give it one more book. If it's not still promising by the end of that book, well, yeah. We are moving on to Miss Percy's Pocket Guide for the Care and Keeping of British Dragons by Quimby Olson. This one, see, I'm in the mood for a romance. I just want something light and fun, and that I'm not going to have to think very hard about. There's a lot of thinking that was going on in the 13th Hour. So much thinking, brain power. It was necessary, and not necessarily in a good way sometimes. So I'm going to start this one, and then I'll check in later with y'all. I've done nothing but read today, and it's been very nice. Even if one of the books had me just, like, going back and forth between ooh and huh. Can you see me? Let's see. Something fell over here, but it wasn't the camera, so that's fine. Hey guys, hello. Welcome to the spin-off of Margaret Talks About Books and also does laundry, which is Margaret Makes the Bed and Talks About Books. It's Sunday. It's my day to do this. And speaking of, if you don't change your sheets on a regular basis, trust me, it will change your life. Teenage Margaret could never. So many skin issues. Just so much better. We're on sprints. You can't tell because my blanket is blocking the computer, but we're on sprints. And so I wanted to talk about Miss Percy's, but I also need to make my bed and I also would like to get some reading done. So I figured, why not put the two together? Hi. I'm so unhinged. I'm sorry. I'm trying to run one readathon and prep for another one and also do a project all at the same time. And like, it's doable. It's just a lot this weekend. I am 96 pages into Miss Percy's, which puts me about 20% into the book. Like about, I think I was 22%. And I'm really liking it so far. Can you see the whole bed? Yeah, you can see the whole bed. Cool. I may go off screen, but deal with it. I'm really liking it so far. Like we are getting on. It is delightfully voicey. It's not a style that is going to work for everyone because it's very tongue-in-cheek and but in a dry way, if that makes sense. Our heroine, she is a spinster. She's 40. We love an older protagonist, especially an older protagonist that's going to be finding love. We love that. That means a lot when you're 35 and still single. She is living with her sister. She came on, basically the setup is that she came on when her sister had her first child because their father had died and she wasn't married, so she needed somewhere to live. And her sister was like, well, why don't you just come live with us until I find a nurse? You can help take care of the baby. And now we're 17 years later, and she's basically helping take care of her sister's 3 children. And has, like, on the one hand, as someone who does censor themselves to make living with family bearable, I'm understanding some of her thinking here, but on the other hand, I'm like, woman, please step up, stand up for yourself. Like, your sister is walking all over you. And she's aware of this. She is aware that her sister just assumes that, that Mildred, her name is Mildred, poor woman, no wonder she's not married. She gets an inheritance, and her sister's first reaction to that was, oh, well, we'll be able to buy something nice for the children. And I'm like, ma'am, not your inheritance. But she gets an inheritance from her great uncle. They think it might be a small pecuniary thing, a small, like, monetary thing. And then while her sister and husband and the eldest are out at someone else's house, she receives this trunk, and this trunk is full of books and all kinds of odds and ends and things, and like, she doesn't have a lot because she lives in her sister's house. She's dependent on her sister's generosity, yada, yada, yada. I just think she's a crappy, like, her sister's a crappy sister, so she kind of just secretly takes all of this stuff and throws the trunk out in the back, and that's a whole hilarious, funny scene, because that's where we meet the love interest, and like, a dude who sees a woman dragging a trunk in the middle of the night, it's like midnight, and she's just dragging this trunk, and he's like, dude, would you like some help? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, this man has been waiting for this moment for years. Basically, it's about dragons. We know there's going to be a dragon, right? That's not a spoiler. But one of the things that she gets is this giant-ass rock, and she's like, oh, this is interesting. And then the guy who, like, he basically, he offers, like, well, if you're worried about your sister, like, getting rid of some of these things, you can come. It's the the vicar, sorry. It's the vicar. He's like, you can just, like, store it in the vicarage. I'd be happy to help you catalog it and blah, blah. The man has been waiting for this opportunity. I'm telling you, he has been watching her and, like, trying to figure out how to arrange a meet cute. That's not just them passing each other on a Sunday. Like, he keeps going, like, would you like to, like, you can come anytime. I'm like, ma'am, just tell him you're cool with getting married, because that's what this man wants. He has been biding his time. This is gonna be really fun. I hope. I assume there is a romance involved. If there is not a romance involved, Brianna lied to me. But this is, like, it's delightful. It's voicey. It is so, the way that she is, like, here's where we have, like, there's this skill in the way that she is communicating information. We have about a page of her kind of explaining her situation. And I think that this is, again, I think this is one that's not going to work for everyone because of the way that the narration is done. She has a lot of parenthetical kind of train of thought stuff that happens. Yes, I am wearing the same shirt. I slept in it. I was only wearing it for 4 hours. Sue me. Why am I out of breath? when you get so excited about a book that you're doing cardio talking about it. Like, the narration style is very unique. It's one it's very fun, and I'm enjoying it. But it also, there are a few places where like these parenthetical thoughts are hard to follow, in my opinion. I can see how it might be a little bit much for somebody who does not like this style of narration, that kind of thing. But I am having a great time with it. And did I get bit again? It's so much fun living in Florida where the mosquitoes are like sentient. If you like Jane Austen, like if you like the Regency type of rom-com and that's something that you enjoy, I think this is going to be fun. I think this is for people who enjoy whimsical books, because this is a little bit whimsical. And it's also like, it's a little over the top in some ways. But it's also like very like a realistic situation that women would find themselves in, with their families and things like that. So like, I'm just like, so far I'm having a good time with it and I'm enjoying it. And like the scene where the egg is hatching and they're, oh, it was great because it happens at the vicar's. He's like, oh my god, they hatched a demon. And he's like, I know it's not a demon, but like, what else am I supposed to call it? And she's just like, a flying lizard? No, it can't be a dragon. No, that's, like, she won't even say the word in her head. She's like, that's absolutely the most ridiculous thing I could have ever thought up. Oh my god, I'm having so much fun with this. I probably should have unboxed this in front of y'all, but we'll get to that in a minute. I have finished Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons. That was the, like when my friend, like, listen, my friends know which books I like. They know what books fit my taste, because it got 5 stars. I just had so much fun with this book. I don't know where we were the last time I updated you on this book, but I just, like, the character, the voice, the plot, there were some places, like, in execution maybe that we could have done things a little bit better. Just because of the parentheticals, but that didn't really bother me. I had so much fun, and then that ending, it was perfect. It was perfect. I cannot wait to get on to book 2. I don't get to get on to book 2 anytime soon, but I am so excited to get there and move on to that. I'm just, yes, it's a good book. It's a good book. I maybe identified a little bit too much with Mildred Percy. Am I in focus? I can't tell. My eyes are... Okay, I'm sorry if I was not in focus earlier. That far away, it is very hard for me to tell, especially when I've been staring at a computer screen all day. I did like us getting to see kind of this situation in Regency England, where we have this woman who is like just a defined old maid at this point. At 40, defined as an old maid. Just that's her kind of main personality trait as far as everyone else is concerned. And she starts realizing that she can do some things to change her life, and then we have this really sweet little romance in it. And like, I like that the romance comes alongside her making a lot of these decisions, but she also is given the tools throughout the novel that if the romance were not an option, she, like it's very much like, I can see where the author is going with this book and why she's going there, because while Miss Percy's sister is absolutely horrendous and self-centered and spoiled, like, not all of her nieces, her nieces and nephews are terrible. They actually, the two that we spend the most time with are actually quite sweet. And so just getting to see this, I'm interested to see where we go with this dragon plot, because, like, I just realized my laundry is sitting behind me. I'm so good. Do you want to focus? I know you're out of focus this time. I'm so good at this vlogging thing. And I just appreciate that kind of through line of her learning to stand on her own 2 feet, but also having people outside of the family that support her. That was really good, because I don't, like, it's one of those things where, like, she was given the tools, but I don't think, like, it's one thing to know you can do something, to be able to know you can get yourself out of your situation or to have options, but it's another thing to know that if you pursue those options, there will be someone to catch you if you fall. And I don't think she's gotten that from her family, but she does find people throughout this book that are willing to be those people for her. I am going to be getting this book and the second book in physical form, because I just had such a delightful time. Oh my god, like, the author, I love it when the author gives you not only exactly what you were like expecting, but you can tell what the author was setting out to do in the book, and they give it to you. It was such a good book. I had so much fun with it. I may take a little bit of a break on physical reading, but I am moving on to an audiobook, and I'm going to be reading A Touch of Light by Thiago Abdallah. This is so pretty, but then, like, here's the thing. Like, it has the dust jacket. I'm not sure why it has the dust jacket, because look, everything is printed. Like, it's printed on here, and I actually like this much better than the dust jacket. It just, the feel of it is nicer. Now, the dust jacket does have the author's photo in it, so we will see. I'm about to go downstairs and cook dinner, so we'll see if I'm going to try and start the book here tonight as an audiobook, and I'm very excited for this one because this is another one that I think I'm going to really enjoy. As far as the book itself goes, just because, like, it seems up my alley. I don't remember what it's about. I don't keep track of that stuff. Do I look like I keep track of that stuff? I just go, oh, I want to read this book, and then when I pick it up, I start reading. Hello, welcome. If you like the shirt, is it cute? It's cute. It's cute, right? It is a BookNet Fest shirt, and they may still be selling them. So if they are, I will put the link down below in the description box because they're still raising money for next year's BookNet Fest. I was like, I need to update these guys about this book before I finish the book because it's just going to be finished, honestly, at this point. I am enjoying it so well. I know the audiobook at least may not work for everyone because it's only one narrator, but like I cut my teeth on recorded books, and those were all narrated by the same dude, just about. Like, there's two people that they used in the 90s and early 2000s. So, like, anyways, that was back when we would get them as cassette tapes. Tells you how old I am. So I'm really enjoying this book. It is, like, here's the thing. Like, just the production value alone of this book, and then the writing quality and all that. If I did not know this was self-pubbed, I would have assumed that this was traditionally published, just because he has, like, this is really well packaged, really well done. Usually with a self-pub book, like, there is something about it that makes me go, oh yeah, this is also kind of a zombie book, which I love when you throw that in like fantasy or sci-fi as part of the world or what's going on, because I don't know, I just think that that's an interesting thing to explore through fantasy or sci-fi. It's not really weird or gruesome. It's more like if you play in D&D, what's going on is this thing is turning people into raging barbarians. The way that he has built the plot and the characters, Nasha has done nothing wrong in her life. We will fight for her. She probably gonna die. They're probably all gonna die. But we will fight for Nasha. Okay? Never done anything wrong in her life. This poor child is just trying to deal with the fact that she's got, like, voice. I'm starting to see some of the connections between Nasha's and... I'm sorry, this is so unhinged and, like, disjointed, but we have these three different points of view. We have Adrian, who I don't care about. Bro is way too obsessed with his dead girlfriend. People are going to die because this man is trying to resurrect his dead girlfriend, and, like, this is only cute when we are trying to resurrect a Dungeons & Dragons character. It's only cute when you're trying to do that. And then we have Nasha, who is dealing with the fact that she has this magic that she's trying to keep under wraps and not let people know the full extent of how it affects her, because it makes her a little crazy. Like, literally takes over her body, kind of crazy, and she ends up being a killing machine. And then we have Lynn, who is a sentinel, and what we know about the sentinels, because this world, like, death is held at bay. Death is the enemy. And so Sentinel's jobs, it reminds me a little bit about Scythe. It's like Sentinel's jobs is to shoulder death so that other people don't have to. Like, it's so interesting to see, like, the level of awareness that Adrian has of the system and how the system is being stacked against normal people. But then he's so delusional also on the other hand. Like, he's like, the system is broken, so I don't need to follow the rules. And I'm pretty, we've gotten to the point where it's like, yeah, bro, this was a poor decision. This was a bad choice. And now you know that this was a bad choice. You should have just let him burn the body. It's this slowly encroaching kind of thing. There's so much to talk about in this book, and I don't know how to. I'm going to be honest. There's a lot of religious themes in this. I'm really interested in like how like the basic kind of way this society is built up is the church has everyone waiting for the, basically it's like they're waiting for the rapture. And so some of the dead, most of the dead I believe, get to be preserved and are going to be resurrected when the seraph comes back. So the way that it is examining how that does things to a society and how that affects people, and the way that people like faith is a big thing, and whether or not your faith is placed in the correct place. I'm having a good time with this. This is really this is probably the best written book that I've read so far on this list that I'm reading. There are a couple of others that I think are going to be on par or might top it, but it's really well done. And I like the fact that this is like less than 500 pages. Like he is writing a very like developed, fleshed out, but succinct fantasy novel, and I appreciate that because I think that we need more like it has an epic fantasy feel, but it doesn't have the epic fantasy length. And as a girl who loves a good epic fantasy, I do also think we need more fantasies that like have that feel, have that world building, have that kind of connection between the characters and the way that this is being done, but also it is not 500, 600, 700 pages, because like sometimes you want that, but you don't have the time to read 13 books in a series, Brandon. Suddenly I have the urge to print out little stickers that say Sanderson, and every time I see a Let's Go Brandon sticker, I just put the Sanderson underneath that on their car. Okay, so that's the update. I've been talking for way too long. This is going to be fun for editing Margaret to do, and editing Margaret needs to start editing this vlog. Otherwise, it's not going up on August 31st. We are here. We has an update. We finished it. 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed this one. So like at some point I need to start ranking these because I need to compare it to I want to compare it to the official ranking if I get all 10. But like if we're going on order of my enjoyment and how well written I think they are, I think Miss Percy's is still number 1. I do expect that to be displaced at some point, but I think Miss Percy's is still number 1. This one's going to come in with 4 stars at 2nd place, and then 13th Hour comes in at 3rd place with 3 stars, I think it was. 4 stars, something like that. So I know I've already talked about like how well written I think this is, blah, 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 blah. The reason, all of that still holds. All of that is still there. The reason that this got 4 stars instead of 5 stars is that some of the smaller issues that like things that I was noticing in the book that weren't bothering me when it came to how quickly things were presented as a problem and then solved, it wasn't really bothering me. And then we got to the end of the book, and like the way, so ends of the book typically very, very hectic, but the way that this specifically was hectic and the way it specifically was structured, I got to a point at the end where I was just like, suddenly stopped caring, because it felt like anytime we were going to make progress in some way, something happened and we had to go, and I just was like, I can't keep doing this, like going back. That is my one critique, is that I do, like, as much as I love that this is a short, succinct, like really effectively written fantasy book, there are places that I would have liked to see it expanded just a little, and I think especially in that ending, so that we can have, like, things were happening and I just didn't care anymore. And I can't explain why that, like, it just felt like it started feeling pointless, I guess, is what you can say, in the way that we're going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth in this ending. And part of it is because I was so freaking tired of Adrian. I was just like, this boy. Anyways, like, there were some pretty big bombshells dropped at the end of this book, and I was just like, I mean, okay, sure. We weren't given any time to absorb it. We weren't given any time to really feel, like, it didn't feel like the characters were feeling the emotional weight of that moment. And so how am I supposed to feel the emotional weight of that moment? I do think, again, like, and I do think it does tie back to some of, like, and they're very small at the beginning, like, it's small, nitpicky, but I think you really see that little bitty pacing issue really gets emphasized at the end of this book, and it does take away some of your enjoyment. I am going to read the next book because I'm interested in what's going to happen with the characters in the next book. Again, I don't care about frickin' Adrian. Like, bro needs to get over his dead girlfriend. You are the heir to a kingdom. You got bigger things to worry about. I'm sorry she's dead. Very sad. Like, I almost feel like, here's what I almost feel like, is that, like, there is a certain point, and I think that point is, if you've read it, it's when Adrian says, get me a ship. There was a certain point where I think we needed to wrap up this book, and it would have been a really good place to wrap up this book, but then it just keeps going, and I feel like, especially some of the stuff that happens, I feel like so much of that, like, needed its own space to be something and to grow, and I think it probably would have been better if we had moved it to the next book. I haven't read the next book, so I don't know what the next book is having to cover. I just, like, the balance between what's going on with Lynn and Nasha, and then Adrian, like, it just unbalanced. And then I just kept going, why is, like, it just started to drag, where I was like, why is this, like, it was fast-paced, but I was like, why is this book not over yet? Either give it a little bit more space, maybe if we'd gotten Adrian where he was a little bit sooner and not spend as much time with some of the stuff that because we're also getting a lot of the stuff he's spending time with, we're getting that with the other characters. Maybe if we hadn't spent as much time with the stuff that he was, like, giving him a little bit more time in this other... Yeah, it was a very good audiobook, though, and it's a very good book. I highly recommend it. All right, so from there, we're going on to Do you want to focus? It might focus on that. It might not. We're going on to Scales and Sensibility by Stephanie Burgess. I feel like a rom-com or a romance is going to be nice. We have little teacup dragons and stuff like that. So we'll move on to that one. This is the one that Brianna thinks is going to be my favorite. So I expect this one to get high marks. I expect, we'll see. It's a Jane Austen retelling. It could really work for me. It may not. I expect to really enjoy this one, though, because it sounds like it's kind of like a twist on the Jane Austen. I think I've already said this, but it sounds like it's a twist on the Jane Austen tale in which, like, the guy that would usually be the villain of a Jane Austen novel is actually going to be the love interest, it sounds like. So I am intrigued to see how she does that. Oof, this lighting is just... I ordered lights to go, like, here so that I could have better lighting over here, and they were warm lights, and I was like, no, we don't do that in this house. We do daylight lights. It is a 5-hour audiobook, so I imagine I will be able to get through it quite quickly, and then move on to something else on this list. All right, it's late, so y'all get the terrible bedside lamp lighting. Sorry, not sorry. I have updates. I don't even know. Like, Scales and Sensibility went by so quickly, I'm not even sure if I remembered to update y'all. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was cute. It was a little over the top for my taste in some of the ways that it was done and it was written. And I did feel, like, so far, I just, like, the winner out of this one has been Miss Percy's, which is really funny. But that just was so, like, that was so well done. This one was a bit different. It did have a lot of similar themes, kind of riffing off of that Jane Austen-esque. We are dealing with the younger protagonist in Scales and Sensibility, but it is also about a young woman kind of going, like, finally speaking up for herself and finding herself. Now, the way she did it was a little bit more magical, I guess. I mean, there are dragons in both of them, so I don't know how like, can you be less magical if there's a dragon involved? I don't know. Are there levels if there's a dragon involved? There just was, like, this one was much more whimsical, and there's something about the very down-to-earth tone of Miss Percy's that really fit that Jane Austen vibe that I don't think this had. This was very much more of a modern Regency romance than I was expecting it to be. I was expecting it to be a little bit more in the Jane Austen style. Not to say that it's, now, that said, it didn't take away from my enjoy. I loved our protagonist. The romance went a little fast, like 4 days? 4 days. 4 days? But it was cute, and I enjoyed it, and I am going to be reading the next book because I think that one's going to be fun and cute as well. And it sounds like it might happen over a little bit longer time, so I don't know. I might like that one even more. It was just, it was just fun, and I don't know, like, how much I can talk about this one, because like the stuff that I want to talk about all involves something that's mildly a spoiler, and it's not mentioned in the synopsis, so I can't like talk about it. It really, her cousin was just the worst. Ooh, what a spoiled child. Part of me wants to like, because there's 3 sisters, so there's obviously going to be 3 books, because the second book is about her other sister. Part of me wants there to be 4 books in this series, and the niece, cousin, whatever she is, gets maybe a redemption arc, learns to be a better person in the final book. But I do like the thing that she's doing with, like, with this one and potentially with the next one, with having like the love interest be, I mean, in this one especially, like the love interest definitely was not who would typically be the love interest in a Jane Austen novel. And I really like that, because the way that she kind of looked at that trope and kind of like, he's not just a fortune hunter because he wants to be rich, he's a fortune hunter because he has people to support. And I liked that twist on it, and that was very interesting to see how she did that. And also just like, he's not a very good fortune hunter, and it was adorable and I loved it. Her dragon, like, it's funny because her dragon really did feel more like an accessory than like a real animal for a lot of it. Like, there were some things that happened, but like just for so many of the scenes they would talk about him and talk around him. And I'm still not over the fact that like people would go to balls with their dragons, and I'm just like, yes, there were animals that were fashionable to have as pets in Regency society, and that makes sense. And you would see people out amongst the ton with their pets. But like, to have their pet brought to a ball, I don't know that is something people did unless they were like royalty. I don't know. Anyways, I've moved on to A Song for the Void by Andrew Piazza. I've read a little bit of it. It is very well written. Like, the writing craft of it is good. It's very nice. It's succinct. I'm already kind of getting an idea of the main character. I don't like him very much. I don't. Because here's the thing. This guy's a veteran of the Opium Wars. And he's got a lot of... And, like, he's not the worst, but he does have a very Western chauvinist kind of superiority to some of his thinking when contrasting Britain with China and their military and their people. And I'm just, like, I'm literally just, like I literally, this morning, today while I was at work, like, just put on podcasts and things that I could listen to brush up on my knowledge of both the East India Trading Company and the Opium Wars, because, like, so, not the best place that I would have learned it from, but, like, I was a big reader of Christian historical fiction novels, and a couple of my favorite series involved the East India Trading Company and the stuff that they did over there in India and China. Obviously, not in the best light, very whitewashed of the history in those books now that I know more. But that is something that, like, because I loved those books so much, whenever a podcast or anything has stuff on that, like, I really did pay attention because I wanted to, like, learn what happened. And it's so frustrating to see this British man looking down on the Chinese military, the Chinese people in this book, and being like, when I, like, he's sitting here talking about the Chinese people and opium and all of this, and, like, I'm reading this with, like, the full knowledge that, and we're very early in all of that stuff, and I don't know how much of this was known at the time, besides amongst the people that were doing it, but Britain basically, like, they set up this opium trade. Like, Britain was the one that was selling opium to the Chinese because that was what they had to sell. And so they would sell it to, like, opium smugglers who would then smuggle it into China. And I'm, like, sitting there going, you're taking this high and mighty kind of idea about, but, like, your country is responsible for the eventual bankruptcy, and I don't know entirely where we are in that history because the Second Opium War hasn't happened yet. The eventual, basically, bankruptcy of this the Chinese government, and it's like, oh god, I can't even remember. Oh, it's a specific dynasty, and I'm so sorry. I wasn't taking notes. I was doing this while I don't remember what it was. Anyways, so basically what I'm saying is, like, I brushed up on some of that just to see how it's handled in here, as he's going, because there were a lot of details I couldn't remember, and I didn't have fresh in my mind, and I just wanted to be able to kind of compare and contrast to what we know now historically. Hello. Hi. Hello. I am here with an update. Of course I'm here with an update. Why am I acting like that's a surprise to anyone? I wouldn't be talking to you if there wasn't an update. We are on page 85, and we need to stop. And I haven't given up complete faith that the author is doing something, because this could be... Okay, so let me back up. Because this is on a Navy ship, obviously a lot of the cast is male. We also have the dead wife and son trope, which, I mean, that's a thing. Like, that's a thing that happened a lot back then. It's funny because who was it that pointed out that, like, Christopher Nolan's, like, worst fear is losing his wife and child, and that's why it turns up a lot into his work. Like, I can't blame people for having that trope in there, because, like, that is genuinely many people's greatest fears, losing their child, losing their spouse. So, anyways, it's very male. We've had there are 3 women that have been parts of the plot. 2 of them are women that died in our main character's past. One was his wife, one was his adopted daughter. And then we have a woman that they took prisoner when they took over some of these, when they were fighting with these pirates. So the only female character we have is a Chinese woman, and she has been described as being very quiet, very shy, very demure. If you know anything about the critiques of how Asian women, and especially East Asian women, are depicted in media, there's this very, very dangerous stereotype of the meek, quiet Asian wife. And it's linked heavily into misogyny, obviously, into Orientalism, all of that stuff. And so we've got that. We also have his daughter, who is being described as very petite and demure. And I'm just like, in a novel that only has one female character, which again I don't have a problem with, because again, like, there's only so many ways that you could do this novel that's going to be set on the ship, that's a military vessel. So that's not my issue. My issue is the fact that he's falling into this very quiet Chinese woman stereotype, and I think, like, he could be subverting that. It could be very much that this woman is putting on a facade because she knows what these men expect of her, and there's more that's going to be happening, because obviously this is horror. Stuff is going to go down. So there's a possibility that is going to happen. Like, when she's the only, number 1, representation of a Chinese woman, and number 2, the only representation of a woman in general, like, I feel like you need to be more careful than that. So I'm going to keep reading. Obviously, I'm very early on in the book, but if I was thinking about it, and even if, like, it ends up being fixed later in the book, it's still something to be talked about, and something that people, for the viewers at least, to be aware of. The author may have already made stuff to counteract that later in the book, obviously, but I just wanted to, I needed to come on and talk about that. Like, the writing, there are a couple of places where I've noticed some typos, or where, like, the sentence is worded a little oddly, but for the most part, the writing of this book is decent. It's not, like, it's better than some of the other books I read on this list. So there's that, but it also is, like, I don't know, just knowing the historical significance of colonialism and capitalism on India, on China, on so much of over there, like, so much of what happens over in China and the countries surrounding it, with Japan and Korea and all of that, happened because we went over there and fucked things up first. And that's not to say, like what was it? I read the Rape of Nanking, and the author in that makes a very clear tie between the tactics of U.S. and British military and what the Japanese eventually did to do. Hopefully it's not too windy and you can hear me all right, but, like, it is dark AF in the house right now, and I just can't be bothered to set up the correct lights to update y'all. Hold on. Big breeze coming through. I finished 2 books at this point. I apologize. I have not been great about keeping y'all updated. But we're gonna have to make. We're just gonna have to make some decisions. So if you couldn't tell by the boarded up windows, I live in Florida, and we are just past a hurricane coming, well, not coming through, because it passed us by. Like, it went up the state and then hit in the panhandle. It's August 30th, is what I'm saying, and there's no way I was getting through all of the books I needed to finish. I'm going to go upstairs and edit everything together and all that, so I'll wrap up once I've kind of refreshed my thoughts on the other videos and stuff, books. But I did finish Song for the Void, and I did end up reading Small Miracles. Small Miracles went by so quickly. It is a very quick audiobook. And I had the best time reading it. Like, it is just so delightful. It's fun. I do think if, like, you don't like sound effects in your audiobooks, it may not, towards the end, it may not be the thing for you, because there are footnotes in the novel. And so there's a little ding that happens when there's a footnote, which is completely unnecessary in my opinion. But, like, it didn't really bother me as someone who doesn't like sound effects until towards the very end. And I also did finish Song for the Void. I think Song for the Void I ended up giving 3 stars. So here's the thing. Or is it? Yeah, I ended up giving out 3 stars. Song for the Void is not terribly written. I do have some issues with some of the way the author chose to handle the content when it comes to the bigotry of the British towards the Chinese in the time period. Like, it was never going to get 5 stars purely because I don't think the author handled it in a way that was responsible. I think he was trying to be responsible, but I don't think he handled it in a way that was responsible, because it wasn't necessary. Like, you can acknowledge it without including the racial slurs of the time in the way that he did, as casually as he did, in my opinion. We also have the fact that, like, I do think that the last update, I think I was talking about the one female character that is part of this. I do think that he handled that decently. I think that we do get more depth and more nuance to her character, and we do get to see kind of that she is very much playing into what is expected of her, because that's how she knows she will survive. So anyways, just on that, like, I've seen it done better. I've seen it done without or with an eye to not perpetuating the harm and the xenophobia that is already still rife within our society. Like, this stuff is not gone away. It just happened. Like, you see it in how anyone in the kind of European area interacts with China. The other issue that I have is, like, this is historical fiction with a horror element. It's not, like, I never in a million years would I have classified this as a fantasy novel, like, at all. It's very much a psychological horror, so, like, and this is, like, I can't dock it too much for this, because it's very hard to horrify me, but, like, there was some stuff that was unsettling, but there was no single point where I was, like, horrified. I was grossed out a couple of times, but, like, that really, like, it was interesting, but it kind of fell flat as far as a horror aspect goes. So I'm not, like looking at the rankings, I'm not sure why this got to this never should have gotten to the final round, because it's not fantasy. It's not a bad book, but it's not fantasy. And so, like, I have an issue with the fact that, like, these are supposed to be the 10 best self-published fantasy novels, and we have a novel on here that's not fantasy. And I'm sure the author has some justification, blah, blah, blah. And obviously you're doing this specific horror element, but that is kind of fantastical in nature, but it's not fantasy. Like, this, I wouldn't even consider this, I'm going to, for the sake of my genre blanket, but I wouldn't even consider this historical fantasy, because the fantasy element is just, like, so very little of the plot. I'll take the same stance that, like, Brianna takes with romance. If you can take the fantasy element out and still have basically the same story, is it fantasy? Like, you could take out this horror element, and I don't, like, there's the specific horror trope that it is a spoiler, so I don't want to spoil that part for people who do want to read this and who do read horror and would find this interesting. But if you took that one twist out, You just have a historical fiction novel and a bunch of people tripping. Like, that's it. Small Miracles is fun. It's like, we're following the, not the angel, like the fallen angel of petty temptations. And like, this character started out as kind of the angel of like everyday pleasures, and then because they questioned, they ended up falling when all of that happened. And they got in a little bit of trouble gambling with their fellow angel and fallen angel buddies. And so their bookie is like, well, if you do this, I will forgive all your debts that for what you've done. So they are to go and tempt this person. Only this person turns out to be the hardest person to tempt in the world, and it's great. I had so much fun. Like, it's the world building, the way that kind of the angels are handled is really interesting. The way that different elements of religion are incorporated. Now, don't get me, like, this is very, very focused on Christianity, because we're kind of circling around the idea of angels and heaven and hell and all of that. We also do have, though, acknowledgement of the, like, of other faiths, and how, like, the idea of, like, there's this kind of grand not pantheon, but like the different faiths are kind of almost like this UN of religions, and we get to see little glimpses of that, and it kind of comes in a couple of fun ways in the plot. So they're like, there's that kind of fun background. It's really an interesting way, I think, to look at religion, but it's like very, very background. It's just something that happens. It examines and it asks a lot of questions, and I love books that do that, that really ask questions about faith and why we believe what we believe, and things like that. And then on top of that, you have this cute little, like, romance sort of thing that's happening between our main character and this person they're supposed to be tempting, who is like, they don't like it's great. I enjoy it. I have fun with it, and it's one of those things that like I enjoyed it. I had fun. It was so very delightful. 5 out of 5 stars. I like the characterization was so well done for a novel that is as short as it is. Like, the world building and like the vibe and the atmosphere. It's very cozy fantasy. Like, that was so well done. I can like it makes sense that this is the one that won. You know what I mean? Like, I understand why Miss Percy's, which was my other favorite, ranked where it did. I also understand why this got as high as it did. I think this is one that very much appeals to not just like people who are fantasy readers. It's also going to appeal to people who don't read a lot of fantasy. So I get why it's popular and all of that. That's a whole other video to do of like what books end up reading or winning fantasy and sci-fi kind of contests. That's another video that we're going to talk about. We're not there yet. I still have 3 books to finish for that one. If anyone would like to see what the reality of my life is right now, that's plywood on my windows. But we do have the ring light. I won't show you that. That'll blind you. I apologize for the fact that I sound like a chain smoker. It's because I was sick last week. And I lost my voice. So this is what we get to deal with. All right, I've been through editing. I haven't even added the last clip that you just saw at this point, and we're at 2 hours. So I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet and maybe not so zoomed in. If you hadn't figured it out, Mysterious Ways, Tethered Spirits, and the Umbral Storm are not getting read in this vlog. I may, if people are interested, let me know. I may do a follow-up vlog with those 3. I know I want to do a follow-up vlog with the sequels, because at least 3 of these books have, 4 of these books have sequels that I am interested in reading. So I will probably do a follow-up vlog at some point with those sequels. Here we are just going to be discussing the overall rankings for the SPFBO 8 contest, like how things ranked, and then my rankings of the 6 books that I read, because I did go through and I ranked them from like my least favorite to my favorite. I don't think either of those are going to surprise people. So for SPFBO 8, the overall winner I've already discussed was Olivia Atwater's Small Miracles. After that, it was the 13th Hour in 2nd place, Song for the Void in 3rd place, Miss Percy's Guide in 4th place, The Umbral Storm in 5th place, Scales and Sensibility in 6th, A Touch of Light in 7th, Tethered Spirits in 8th, Mysterious Ways in 9th, and Fire of the Forebears in 10th. So looking at this, I think, other than the fact that I think A Touch of Light and Miss Percy's Guide are lower than I put them, I think this is pretty accurate if you take Song for the Void out and put it all the way at the bottom. Again, because I just don't feel like it's not, there is not a single moment in there that I felt, oh, this is fantasy. And like, that is you feel that in books that are fantasy. Like you have that moment. But let's talk about my final rankings. Obviously, at the very end, in number 6 is A Song for the Void. Because again, it has that, there's stuff that I don't feel was handled as well as it could have been. I think story-wise, writing-wise, all of that stuff does really, really well. But I cannot separate a book from its context. I just can't, and I won't, because I think that is important. I think it was handled better than a lot of people would have. I just, again, based on what I have read and seen and the research I've done in how to represent and how to discuss those topics when it is not your lane, I think it could have been done much, much better. I think that there are very few places where I can be okay with a white author using racial slurs in a casual way, and it could, it's one of those things where he didn't use, they weren't used as often as they could have been, and it was already in appropriate places. But again, at the end of the day, the question is it appropriate? So for all those reasons, Song for the Void last in my rankings. After that, we do have the 13th Hour. So much of this vlog, you have heard so many of my thoughts on the 13th Hour, and I think it all just really comes down to, I think this book needed another edit, because all of the ideas are good and it's very intriguing in this world, and I have lots of questions. I'm definitely going to be continuing on in the series. I want to at least give it one more book to see if there's improvement. But the main part of the book was the last 25%, and the first 75%, so much of that just, I feel we were not allocating our time and the story in a way that really lent towards the reader's experience. It's obviously not the worst written thing I've ever, it's very far from that. I just think that there are places where I feel, and again, you have to keep in mind that I don't know the author's access to critique partners, to beta readers, critique partners, beta readers, that kind of thing. I don't know their access to all of that, because this is indie pub. But I do think it would have done with an outside voice going, hey, if we moved this around a little bit and we kind of restructured some of these events and we put these things together and did, being able to go through and do a proper developmental edit, I think you would have a very, very strong book with this one, but I don't, it just wasn't done. After that, we have in 4th place, we have Scales and Sensibility. This is where we get into the books that I gave 4 stars. I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I didn't love it as much as I thought I was going to love it, but I also think that part of that is just because it's a 4-day romance, and I'm just there are situations where I can believe that, and it does make sense for the time to a little bit, but the level of ardor after 4 days, I'm just this doesn't. And at the end of the day, I felt like the dragon element was kind of, you're telling me Scales and Sensibility, and you're taught this whole society with all the, I felt like the dragon element was just there as, just barely there. We barely interacted with Sir Jessamine, which I can confirm, as Brianna said, is very, Schmidt in lizard form, in dragon form, I guess. But there's a lot more that could have been done. I would have liked a little bit more depth, and I think that this one frustrated me more than any of the other books in some places, just because her cousin was so awful. And then we had the dragons, but they were only there kind of as conversation pieces. There wasn't a lot that was, it's a very complicated, very overdramatic, very soapy kind of plot. There you go. So I do think that this one's fun. This one is definitely worth checking out if you like Regency romance and all of that stuff. Just know this is going to be super campy, and if you're not wanting campy, don't, like, this isn't what you're gonna want. In third place, we have A Touch of Light by Tiago Abdallah. My thing is that towards the end of this book, I stopped caring. Like, it got to the point where I think there was a logical place for this to have wrapped up, and we went a little bit too far. Because the events that happened after this place, like, they didn't have enough room to breathe, in my opinion. And so it got to the point where I stopped caring because it felt like nothing mattered anymore. It felt like no matter what was anything that was happening, the turnaround was going to be so quick to us having to do something completely different. It stopped mattering. I stopped caring. I was like, none of this matters. And I don't think, like, that's not a good thing to have your readers do. But other than that, I thought this book was so well done. It is like, this was almost a perfect book. Like, it was beautifully immaculate, with the exception of Adrian existing. It's perfect. And even then, Adrian's, like, doing important stuff for the plot. It's just, like, towards the end, I was just like, okay, like, I think it just was a lot of, like, depending on, like, where we at, again, allocating things where they belonged in the story. And I think this is another situation where some of this would have been better served with a little bit more room in the next book versus trying to cram it all in here at the very, very end. But it was really, really well done. I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I am definitely continuing on with this series. It was so much fun. So second and first place were really hard, and it just is going to come down to one of them. I absolutely, like, I adored both of them, but one of them I preferred more because I identified more with it. So in second place, we're going to have Small Miracles by Olivia Atwater. I love Olivia Atwater. Check out her Fae series, Half a Soul. I absolutely adored this. Gave it 5 stars. Definitely going to be adding it to my shelves at some point eventually. I'm terrible at buying books that I actually like. I just, like, I forget that I want them, and then I don't buy them. This was just so well done with characterization, with pacing, with, like, the world building and all of that stuff. I thought that it was just perfect. It was everything that I wanted it to be. There was nothing missing. I didn't walk away from this book feeling like, I walked away feeling like, oh, I could do more in this world, but I didn't walk away from the book feeling like I was missing out on anything or anything hadn't been covered with sufficient depth for the story that was being told. So I absolutely just read it. It's such a good book. It is just, like, the way that she covers all of the questions that I discussed and, like, all of that stuff. Just beautiful, wonderful. Cannot wait to see what else she has. And then the final book, which probably I'm going to just jump into the sequel once August and the Amazing Readathon are over, because I can't right now, but, like, as soon as I'm able to. The number one of this was Miss Percy's Guide to Pocket, the Care and Feeding of British Dragons. No, Miss Percy's Pocket Guide. It's a long title, okay? And I love the fact that it's a long title, but it is a very long title. And I gave this 5 stars. This was so much fun. And now I am someone who I understand why this was, like, 4th place instead of, like, 2nd or 3rd place. And that's because the narrator is very voicey. It's very eclectic. I understand why a lot of people this book was not working with them. However, for me, just the way that, like, all of the, like, the narration mixed with the characters, mixed with the storyline, the world building, all of the things that are happening in this book, they just, like, came together to be this perfect storm of, like, what I love in a book. I'm very much, like, this felt like, you know how you'll have a movie or you'll have a play. Into the Woods is a fantastic example of this, where the narrator is their own character. That's kind of what is going on in this story, and I love stories like that. And so, of course, this was going to really, really work for me. So I gave it 5 stars. I cannot wait to jump into the sequel of this book because, like, we didn't leave at a good place. I literally wanted to jump into the sequel of this right away, but I couldn't because I had all of the rest of these books that I needed to read. So this is probably going to be, like, the first book I pick up for September because I'm adoring this. This is just so much fun. I'm loving it. I'm having a good time. I just cannot wait to see. I hope there are so many books in this series. I'm just, like, I adored it. Those are all of my thoughts for the SPFBO 8 winners or finalists that technically they only like 10 of them made it to finals. There was 1 winner. Those are all of my thoughts for the SPFBO 8 books. I really enjoyed this. I think I read a lot of books that, like, I'm going to be continuing on with the series. I had a fun time. Pray for me as I edit this. This will be way too late, but for y'all because it will have been edited by the time you've seen it. But yeah, just like thoughts and prayers for the amount of editing that I'm probably gonna have to go through this video 2 or 3 times because I cannot shut up. So anyways, if you would like more from me, I will have a couple videos over here that you may enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. That is it for now, my friends. I will see you later when we will talk. Oh, don't forget, check out I will have the playlist with everyone else who did this linked down below. Please go check out everyone else's videos. We're all going over and doing different awards. So like, definitely check everyone else's videos out. We've all worked very hard on this, and we've all got like some of these I'm like, oh, this is going to be very interesting to see what people's opinions are and what's going, because we have people that are still, they have not finished their books yet, and I'm just like, oh, this is going to be so much fun to see all of everybody's thoughts all at once. So that is it for now, my friends. Happy reading, and I will see you later when we will talk about more wordy, nerdy things. Bye.